Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork. Today we're going to be discussing financial health, and I'm so excited to have a special guest with me today, Gayland Jones. Gayland is a certified public accountant. He studied accounting and business administration at Southern Utah University, where he earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees. He is currently the CFO controller for the Granite Education Foundation. He is also the author of 2 books, Fight the Good Fight and Money to the Power of 10. And it's his second book that we'll be talking about today. Gayland, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you with me today.
Hi, Linda. It's good to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Will you please explain the significance of your title, Money to the Power of 10?
Yes. It's a math term of exponential growth. So the 10 is the power. I've thought about this a lot, and there are 10 steps. So if you acquire 1 cent and then you times that by 10, by 10, by 10, by 10 like that, you go all the way up to $10 million.
Ooh, that would be nice.
This book is just trying to help all of us to have ideas of what we can do to, increase our wealth, increase money and value over time. So 1 cent all the way to $10 million, power of 10, and it can really grow and become, a large amount, increase over time, and just slow and steady. So it's a great principle.
So the idea then is taking your money and helping it to increase. And it would be awesome if it could increase to the power of 10, but even if you could increase it just a couple steps, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's a growth. It's an increase. You're on the path. You're doing well. So any little bit of success is great. We're progressing and improving as we go.
Fantastic. I read your book, and it includes a lot of money-saving tips and how to get the most out of your dollar. In some ways, it reminded me of another book that I read years ago called The Tightwad Gazette, Promoting Thrift as a Viable Alternate Lifestyle by Amy Decision. And it seems that thrift, which means the quality of using money and other resources carefully and not wastefully, is a very important component to financial health and is very important to you personally.
Yes, money is a tool, and we want to put it to good use to do the greatest amount of good for us and our family and for others that it can. So we want to be wise in how we earn it, how we spend it, how we use it, take care of our responsibilities and necessities, and also to enjoy life.
Oh, I like the idea that life is to be enjoyed. I think that is really important when we're talking about money, because a lot of times, anytime you talk about budget, you think, scrimping and saving and being miserable. So I love the idea that you find more joy in your life. In contrast to many get-rich-quick schemes that are out there, you promote a get-rich-slow plan. So in the race between the tortoise and the hare, you're putting your money, literally, on the tortoise.
Definitely. Slow and steady. That's how I like to do things. And some years ago, I actually ran the numbers. You watch the stock market, and it goes up a little, maybe it goes up a lot, and then it kind of crashes and goes down, and there's gains and losses and ups and downs, and people live day to day watching that every day, and they stress out or they're really excited if it goes up. But if you can just get, say 5 to 6 to 8% interest growing on your money, and just that steady growth, that compounding, that interest growing and building on each other without losing or taking big hits on the downside, you'll win out in the end all day. So just slow and steady, progress, grow, let it build, and have positive increases over time. Just be consistent at it, and you feel good. You feel like, hey, I'm just building and growing steady. I'm being consistent and being steady.
That is awesome. I'd like to talk about something you mentioned in your book called the 5-finger system to financial freedom.
Yes, the 5-finger system to financial freedom, try to make it easy to where you can count them on one hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first one being to give, to pay tithing.
And it may seem counterintuitive to many people that giving to charity is the first step to financial freedom and independence. But interestingly, you're not the only author who has suggested that this really is the first step. In the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Richard Kiyosaki, he says the same thing. And he says that his mentor, who he calls his rich dad, believed in giving to churches and charities. He took 10% of his gross income and tithed it. He often said, God does not need to receive, but humans need to give. Rich Dad was certain that he owed much of his good financial fortune to tithing. And he would say, God is my partner. And if you don't pay your partner stops working. And then you have to work 10 times harder. Rich Dad believed in the law of reciprocity. Said in a scientific way, this can be stated as for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Or, to put it in religious terms, the Bible says, give and it shall be given unto you. Kiyosaki insists that if you want to be rich, you must get in the practice of giving money regularly. And he explains that there are natural laws of why this works, and then there's also a matter of mindset. When we're in the mindset that giving is something that takes away from you, then that leads to not wanting to give anything, and you become miserly and miserable. But if we're in the mindset that giving is something that gives back to you, then that leads to happiness and financial success.
Yes. So we don't want to be selfish. We want to be charitable and giving. And I believe in what we give, what we send out returns back again to us. It's the boomerang effect. And so first we give and then we will receive. It does come back to us. You see those examples all around us. And so everything that we receive comes from up above. We need all the help that we can get. We're humans here on earth and we need a higher power to help us. And why wouldn't we want the heavens to be open to us to receive the help that we need from, the being up above? And it does really work out. It's not a matter of money. It's more of a faith principle. And we actually do receive more than we started with in the first place.
That's awesome. Okay, the next step in your 5-finger system to financial freedom is to avoid debt. And you included some statistics in your book that I found interesting and disturbing. The average household debt is over $135,000, and over 67 million households in the United States carry credit card debt with an average balance of $6,849 and carry the cost of $1,162 per year in interest and fees. So I just want to stop there for a minute. That's almost $100 each month in interest and fees. And that doesn't include repaying the principal. That's just the interest and the fees. So if these statistics are accurate, then the average person is paying $100 a month and getting nothing in return. It's just $100 that goes poof because they don't understand the concept of interest. There's a famous quote by Albert Einstein. He was asked the question, what is the most powerful force in the universe? And he said, interest. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it.
Exactly. Compound interest will do amazing things for us over time as we save and invest. It can be a great tool for us, a great help. And that's where we want to be, is we want to have our money earning and increasing and growing and working for us. If we're in debt, then we have a lot of bills. We have a lot of things to pay, and it stresses us out. A little debt might be okay for like a home or an education or things that are of value that will, give value to us over time in our lives. But just to have unnecessary debt where we're constantly paying bills and paying money and it's not coming to us, but it's going to someone else, that debt can crush us over time. It takes away from our happiness. So to get out of debt or to pay our debt off quickly, the highest balance with the highest interest rate, pay it off, get out of debt, and be financially free, that's what we want to do.
And you mentioned just now about how it affects our happiness and how it affects our stress levels. And I was thinking about that as well, because debt can be a huge strain on marriage relationships. Some statistics say that crushing debt and fights about money are the number 1 cause of divorce. And other sources say that infidelity is number 1 and money is number 2. But either way, debt wreaks havoc on relationships. So getting out of debt and staying out of debt is not only about money. It's also about relationships and being happy.
Yes, definitely. I heard a statistic when I was younger that up to 89% of all divorces are caused by money problems. And it's a huge issue. we definitely want to manage our money. It'll give us so much freedom and happiness by doing that.
And that makes such a huge difference. Okay, let's move on to the third step in the 5-finger system to financial freedom. You talked about using a budget. A budget is a plan for how we're going to spend our money, not just a record of where it went. Having a financial plan helps you see where you might be wasting money and empowers you to get more of what you really want. And in your book, you shared an object lesson about how a budget is kind of like filling a container with rocks. Would you share that?
Yes. So if you first fill the container with sand or small rocks, then you find that in the end, you don't have enough room for the big rocks to fit those big rocks in. They start overflowing, or there's just not even enough room to start putting them in. But if it, when it gets to the end of the month, and there's not enough money to buy all the things that we seem to need, and then let alone the things that we want. So we need to use this analogy to work in our lives. If you put the big rocks or large expenses in first, like rent or your house payment, your car payment, the things that we need that are important, you put those big expenses in first, then you'll find that you can still fit in the small rocks. Those small expenses will actually still fit in, and we can still use the money for good, small expenses, for good things here and there, and to enjoy life.
I like the idea that a budget is not about being a punishment, but it's a way to get more of what you want without falling into that trap of debt. I believe that with our finances, we can have anything we want, but we can't have everything we want. And there's a big difference between those two statements. Budgeting is about choosing what you want most and about making sure that the needs are met first. And being able to distinguish the difference between needs and wants is an important skill. I have some friends who had an adult son who didn't move out until he was in his 40s. He couldn't afford basic living necessities like rent, utility, car insurance, groceries, and things like that, because he was addicted to his luxuries. He'd regularly spend $300 on an excellent sushi meal, and he was making payments on his new Lexus, so obviously there wasn't enough money for boring things like rent and other necessities. And his parents finally had to serve legal papers of an eviction notice to get the authorities involved. The idea that needs come first and then wants is not obvious to everyone. But the sooner we can figure that out, the better off we are in the long run.
Yes, it's easier to make mistakes when we are young because they usually are smaller and we have time to learn from them, to fix them, and take care of them as we get older, as we gain more knowledge and experience. But the stakes get higher the older we get, the older we become. And as we make mistakes, we may not be able to recover from those mistakes later in life. So, this is a crazy example that you mentioned, but it's definitely, better to learn when we're younger. And that's what we want to do. I think of in our family, we started our kids out young, trying to teach them, how to manage their money, budgeting techniques. And we had these envelopes where they could put money in. So they would do, work, chores around the house, whatever, and we would pay them money, pay them like an allowance. And then they could put this money divided up into these envelopes with like savings, mission, sports or fun, just 3 or 4 different categories. And I can still think of my little guy when he was really small, really young. He loved soccer and he was holding on to his $5 bill, and he did not want to spend that $5 bill on soccer. He didn't want to give it up because he had learned the value of money, of working, earning money, and putting it aside in different kind of buckets. But he eventually, he's a kid. Eventually he said, I really like soccer so much, I'm willing to pay the $5 for soccer to be able to play. But our kids, they had to, pay for soccer, or pay for an iPod or whatever. And we worked with them and helped them. And hopefully we taught them the principles of, these money management principles, how to manage your finances and take control of your life.
And it sounds like you started at a very early age so that they learned those principles and it became a part of them. That's beautiful. That certainly would have helped this young man who's not so young anymore. That's not taught in every home. So let's move on to the fourth step in the five-finger system, and it is to save for a rainy day. Finance guru Dave Ramsey totally agrees with this step, but he actually puts it first instead of fourth in his program. He has a 7 Steps Baby program, and he says the first step is to have a goal to save $1,000 as fast as you can. This is an emergency fund to cover those unexpected life events that you can't plan for, so it doesn't put you into debt while you're trying to work your way out of debt. And in your book, you talk about short-term savings and long-term savings. So the Dave Ramsey 1,000 savings goal would be like a short-term goal. And you also talk about creating long-term savings, and you recommend putting away a little bit of money each month and setting 10% as a goal. You also mentioned timing and how important it is to get time on your side. And I like the example that time is our best investment. And the illustration that assuming we retire at age 65 and assuming we get an 8% return compounded monthly, then every dollar invested at age 25 will increase in value 23.3 times. Every dollar invested at age 35 will increase in value 9.9 times. Every dollar invested at age 45 will increase in value 3.9 times. And every dollar invested at age 55 will increase in value only 1.2 times. So the difference is immense when we have more time for the money to increase in value. A lot of people don't start thinking about retirement until they're 50 or older. But the money invested doesn't increase a lot because it doesn't have time to really work for us.
Yes, if you start saving at age 25, your money will increase 23 times by the age of 65 when you retire. But if you wait and then you only start saving, like 10 years before retirement, say from 55 to 65, then your money will only increase one time. It's just crazy how if you start when you're young versus when you're older, your money can grow 23 times larger over your life.
That's huge.
So that time value of money with the compound interest, building, growing, just gaining larger and larger, bigger and bigger over time. Compound interest and time, those two principles are just huge. They're game changers. So if you start when you're young, the wealthier you will become.
That is really good advice. Dr. Shannon Brooks, he is the president of Monticello College, and he has an interesting approach to his definition of savings. In his book, American, he says that money should be measured in units of time and not money. The question he asks is, how many months could you survive on your current savings? And this takes into account your amount of savings in proportion to your monthly expenses. To increase our wealth, we can either increase our savings or decrease our expenses, or of course we can do both.
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it. Be great to do both, right? To increase our savings and decrease our expenses. We often think of money, but this approach of thinking of time, that I need to have enough money for 1 month or 3 months or 6 months or a year. But for sure, to focus on savings and decreasing our expenses. Do both. That would be great.
All right. That's a really good idea. Okay. So the fifth and final step in your five-finger system is to teach your family. And it sounds like you've done a really good job. Do you want to explain a little bit about why teaching your family is the fifth step?
Yes, because we're all in this together with our family, at home, money in, money out, the flow of money. And so we can teach our children, they can help us as parents, we can help them. We're all better off, and then all of us go out into society. We're part of a community, town, a city, a state, a nation. And so it's great to learn together, to work together. We pay for things like a home, a car, utilities, food, clothes, and we have fun together. And so it's important to, if we do things together, money management should also be part of that. The principles of money management, work together and, work on our finances, have the same goals and the same plans, and it brings more peace to our home, peace to our lives.
I like that. I think having peace in our home is a big deal. And if money issues are huge in divorce issues. I imagine it's huge in family stress and in everything. So there are two more concepts from the book that I'd like to make sure we cover. One is the idea of using automation as a tool to help reach your financial goals. And the other is the idea of investing in yourself through lifelong learning. So let's briefly discuss some ways to use automation to help us save. My husband and I use some automation strategies to help us save. My husband's employer has options where we can have a percentage of his paycheck automatically transferred into his retirement account. And that's a pretty common thing. And it's really nice that we don't have to think about it. It just happens regularly as we receive a paycheck.
Yes, automation is a key to successful finances. It helps you to save, to invest, and you don't really have to think too much about it. If you earn money in a paycheck, if you can take some of that money and start putting it into savings or a bucket here, a bucket there, then it's just done automatically for you, and you don't see it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it, and then that money is building. It's earning. It's building. It's saving. And it's just less stress and less things that you have to do and worry about. But you're still saving and planning for your future.
So we can be saving without having to think about money all the time.
Yeah.
And I like your comment about putting it in different buckets. We even use our banking account to help put it in some separate buckets, so to speak, for us. So when the check comes, it automatically a percentage goes into savings, some goes into an amount that we've calculated we need in order to take care of our expenses. And then if there's anything left over, then it goes into a separate account. We actually have two, one for my husband, one for myself. That's kind of our fun money. And so we know if we have some money to spend or if we don't. You are very careful and you like to think about where the money's going. And my husband is very much not that way. He doesn't want to add up anything. But this way, it's automatic and he knows, yes, I can buy this, I can do what I want, or no, I need to wait a little bit longer. And we found that to be super helpful.
Yeah, it's a great way to be. There's not always, just one way to do things. So we're all a little different. We have maybe different ways of doing it or different personalities. But what works for you, that's great. Some people are more, precise and looking at everything. Others are not as much. But still, the concept is there that if we automate our finances, we save, and it just comes out. We don't have to worry about it, but we're still getting to the same goal, right? We're still building and saving.
So the principles are the same, but the application can vary according to what people's needs and their personalities. And I really appreciate that because we're not all accountants. That's not our love and our focus, but there's still a way to make it work for different personalities. And I really appreciate that. So the final topic for this discussion is investing in yourself through lifelong learning. And again, in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the author teaches that the single most powerful asset we have is our mind. And he talks about the importance of giving yourself the gift of financial education. And in your book, you offer several suggestions for sources of continued learning, like reading, experimenting, taking classes, listening to podcasts, and talking to experts in the field.
Yes, you are important. So you should work on yourself. We all need time, a little bit of time each day to improve ourselves, to increase our capacity, to learn a new skill, develop ourselves, maximize our potential. So if we can read a book, or we can experiment on something, take some classes, learn a skill, that's how we invest in ourselves. That's how we improve ourselves. And the skills that we have, we can turn them into, good jobs, or show our bosses our productivity, or start a business, or whatever. We can put those skills to good use and have that increase for us, increase in our earnings, increase in time, our capacity, and do great and wonderful things with it. It's just it's a process, right? Step by step, little by little, we work at it, we do a little more, we progress, and that's what it's all about, is that, you are important, you are special, and, we should work on ourselves a little each day and just improve ourselves, and we also feel good about that. It gives us satisfaction, we feel good, we feel happy, like we're doing something, we're learning, we're progressing. So that's what this book's all about, Money to the Power of 10. Just trying to help you with some ideas, things in your life that you can build up your finances to, manage your finances, take control of your life, and put money to good use for you.
I appreciate that. And I love your comments about how investing in yourself is not only about money, it's about self-worth, and it's about that you matter, because that's something that's very important to me personally, is helping people to understand their personal worth. And I think working on that is very valuable. So Gayland, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. In closing, I'd like to share a quote from Dave Ramsey. He said, "You must gain control over your money, or the lack of it will forever control you." Today, I invite you to do one thing to gain control over your money. See you next time on Linda's Corner.